Here we talk about the making of nationalism in Europe. Moving on to Europe in the mid 18th century, Europe had no unified nation states during that time. Regions like Germany, Italy, and Switzerland were fragmented into smaller kingdoms, duchies, and cantons. Each ruler had complete control over their respective territory. Eastern and Central Europe were dominated by autocratic monarchies. These empires encompassed diverse groups of people varying in ethnicity, language, and culture. Let's take an example of Habsburg Empire. It was a vast empire ruled over territories like Austria and Hungary, containing multiple distinct regions. The regional diversity include Alpine regions, which include Tyrol, Austria, and Sudetenland, German-speaking Bohemia, Italian-speaking provinces like Lombardy and Venetia, Hungary, which was split linguistically between Magyar speakers and other dialects, and Polish-speaking Galicia. The peasant groups included Bohemians and Slovaks in the north, Slovenes in Carniola, Croats to the south, and Romans in Transylvania. The diverse populations within these territories lacked political unity. The only commonality was their allegiance to a single emperor, but no sense of national identity. Let's see about aristocracy and the new middle class. Landed aristocracy, though small group in the population, were the socially and politically dominant class. They refer to a small elite class that held significant social and political power primarily through the ownership of land. This class had considerable influence over societal norms and political decisions due to their wealth and land holdings. Despite geographical differences, members of the landed aristocracy shared a common lifestyle across regions. Aristocrats owned large estates in the countryside. They also owned houses in towns, which facilitated their involvement in political, social, and economic activities. French was often the language of the aristocracy used for social and diplomatic purposes. Aristocratic families were closely interlinked through marriages, which helped to consolidate wealth, power, and influence. The land holding patterns. In Western Europe, the land was primarily farmed by tenants and small farmers who managed smaller plots of land. In Eastern and Central Europe, the land was predominantly cultivated by serfs working on large estates owned by the aristocracy. What are the impact of industrialization? In Western and Central Europe, industrialization led to significant growth in industrial production and trade, which in turn spurred the development of towns and cities. The rise of industrial capitalism contributed to the emergence of a commercial class that engaged in trade, industry, and finance. In England, industrialization began in the latter half of the 18th century. In France and parts of Germany, the industrialization accelerated during the 19th century. New social groups have emerged. Working class, composed of individuals employed in factories, mines, and other industrial settings, they often faced challenging working conditions, low wages, and long hours, which led to the growth of labor movements and demands for social reforms. Middle class included industrialized businessmen and professionals. The ideas of national unity emerged among educated middle class, which eventually led to the abolition of aristocratic privileges. The word liberalism originated from the Latin word liber, which means free. Politically, this meant freedom for the individual, equality of all before law, government by consent, end of autocracy and clerical privileges, enforcing constitution, formation of representative government through parliament, and protection of private property. But though we say equality before law, it did not grant voting rights or suffrage to everyone. The right to vote and the right to get elected was only for property owning men. Under Jacobins, all adult males could vote, but under Napoleonic Code, it was limited to propertied adult males and women were considered as minor. This made women and non-propertied men to protest throughout 19th and early 20th centuries. Economically, liberalism means freedom of markets and the abolition of state-imposed restrictions which would promote the free movement of goods and capital. Let's take the example of German-speaking nations in the first half of the 19th century to get an overview on the economic condition at those times. Napoleon's restructuring of the German states led to the consolidation of numerous small principalities into a confederation of 39 states. Although unified under the confederation, each state retained its own currency, weights, and measures reflecting regional autonomy despite political reorganization. Merchants traveling between states faced numerous customs barriers. For example, a merchant traveling from Hamburg to Nuremberg in 1833 encountered 11 customs posts. At each post, merchants were required to pay a 5% customs duty calculated based on the region's specific weights and measurements. The lack of uniformity in weights and measures further complicated trade. A measure such as Eli used for cloth varied significantly across regions. In Frankfurt it meant 54.7 centimeter, Mainz it was 55.1 centimeter, Nuremberg 65.6 centimeter, and in Freiburg it meant 53.5 centimeter. These regional discrepancies in measurement standards made pricing and transactions inconsistent, hindering economic integration. Growing frustration with the fragmented customs systems and varying regional regulations led to demands for the creation of a unified economic territory in the German-speaking states. In 1834, the Zollverein or Customs Union was established at the initiative of Prussia and later joined by other German states. This union abolished the internal tariff barriers that had previously divided the German states, allowing for the free movement of goods across borders within the union. One of the significant achievements of the Zollverein was the reduction of over 30 regional currencies to just two, simplifying trade and economic transactions across the states. The expansion of the railway network during this period further stimulated mobility and trade within the Zollverein. The success of the Zollverein and the growing sense of economic interdependence helped strengthen wider nationalist sentiments. Now emerged a new political philosophy of conservatism. Napoleon was finally defeated at the Battle of Waterloo in 1815 by a coalition of major European powers including Britain, Russia, Prussia, and Austria. His defeat ended years of revolutionary and Napoleonic wars that had reshaped much of Europe. Following Napoleon's defeat, European governments were largely driven by conservatism, a political philosophy focused on preserving the social and political order. Conservatives valued the importance of traditions, established institutions, and customs and practices that they believed had provided stability over time. Conservatives favored gradual development rather than rapid or revolutionary change. While they sought to maintain stability, they did not aim to return Europe to the pre revolutionary order, but instead wanted to balance tradition with controlled progress. Conservatives recognized that modernization, such as the reforms initiated by Napoleon, could actually strengthen traditional institutions like monarchy. They believed that modernization could improve state power by creating more effective and centralized systems of governance. Key to this was the development of a modern army, an efficient bureaucracy, and a dynamic economy, all of which were seen as necessary to compete in an increasingly industrial and competitive European landscape. They also supported the abolition of feudalism and serfdom because they recognized that these outdated systems hindered economic and military efficiency. Then, the representatives of the major European powers met in Vienna to re establish order in Europe after Napoleon's defeat. The Congress was hosted by Austrian Chancellor Duke Metternich. They signed the Treaty of Vienna in 1815. This treaty aimed to undo the political and territorial changes brought by Napoleon and restore pre revolutionary stability. It restored the Bourbon dynasty in France. This symbolized the return to monarchical rule, reversing Napoleon's influence. By this treaty, France lost all territories that had been annexed under Napoleon's rule. To prevent future French expansion, some new states were created around France's borders. In the north, the Kingdom of the Netherlands was created, including Belgium. In south, Genoa was added to the Kingdom of Piedmont. Prussia gained territories on its western frontier and a portion of Saxony. Austria took control of northern Italy. Russia received a portion of Poland in the east. The Congress restored the monarchies that had been overthrown during Napoleon's reign. This restoration was part of an effort to maintain conservative principles and resist the spread of revolutionary ideas. In short, this conservative regime that emerged after the Congress of Vienna were highly autocratic, concentrating power in the hands of monarchs and ruling elites. They tried to maintain strict control over the political and social life, emphasizing the preservation of traditional authority. They were intolerant of criticism and dissent. Efforts were made to suppress any form of opposition to their rule, so imposed censorship laws to control the flow of information. Despite these repressive measures, liberals continued to be inspired by the ideals of French Revolution. One of the main concerns of liberal nationalists was the freedom of the press, which they saw as crucial to challenging conservative power and spreading reformist ideas.